So there's this new doctrine floating around. It's called Lunar Sabbath or Lunar Sabbatarians. They are doing this mind-boggling just nonsense to try to proclaim that the true Sabbath will be on the 8th, the 15th, the 22nd, and the 29th of every month according to the moon. If I could spend 2 or 3 hours refuting every bit of this, but I'm going to go through the biggest points because it's actually leading people away from the perpetual covenant, the sign between God and his people, the true Sabbath. This is Exodus 31:17. You know, Daniel prophesied that they're going to change times and laws, and they have. The church, you know, they're trying to say that Sunday is the day that he rose. How they can't count 3 days, 3 nights is beyond me. Friday evening to Sunday morning does not make 3 days, 3 nights. He was cut off mid-time during the week, as Daniel prophesied. He rose on a Sabbath day. Now, Satan is creeping in with other doctrines to cause confusion, but God is not the author of confusion. We're going to go through the main topics on this because I could spend 2 or 3 hours just refuting every bit of this nonsense. But I mean, even in the very beginning, God said, "Let there be light," and he saw the light. The light was good. This was 3 days before the sun and the moon were created. That was until day 4. So how was that first weekly Sabbath reckoned if the moon wasn't even there? There's your sign right there. But we're going to go through it all. And I pray that you guys, that if you are following this false doctrine, that you listen to the evidence and test everything. You know, you really have to prove this thing. If there's any doubt in this doctrine or any doctrine, then you have to, you know, go with the truth. And the truth is, it's a perpetual count. 6 days you work, 7th day you rest. It's so simple. It's so simple to figure out, but we'll go through it all. And yeah, let's get into it. All right, before we get into actually debunking this theory, this doctrine that's being propagated, I'm going to go through and show you what they claim, what their doctrine actually is, what they teach. And then we're going to go through the historical writings, through the scriptures. We're going to go through all their strongest points and refute those with the evidence in the scripture. We'll go through Ezekiel 46, Amos 8. We'll go through 1 Samuel 20, because in itself, they don't know the key of David, because the key of David clearly debunks their entire theory altogether when you tie, you know, 1 Samuel 20, 21, and Leviticus 24 to see when the showbread was given, which is on the Sabbath, which was the 3rd day of the month, not the 5th or the 18th or any of those days that they claim. So let's get into establishing what they think. So lunar Sabbatarians teach that each new moon resets the weekly 7th-day Sabbath, which God established on the 7th day of creation. According to their hypothesis, when a month ends on a Tuesday and a new moon appears the next day, the day is not Wednesday, it is a new moon day. The lunar Sabbath ignores the current 7-day cycle in use today and uses the new moon to determine when a new week begins and ends. The lunar Sabbatarians do not count the new moon day as one of the 6 working days or as a weekly Sabbath. They count the day after the new moon day as the first day of a 6-day work week. This mind-bending method of counting ensures lunar Sabbatarians that every weekly Sabbath falls on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th of each month. Then there's like other groups that do the same thing, but they count it for the 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th. Who propagated this theory? Where did it first come about? 1955. A guy named Jonathan David Brown. He was a Christian music. He was a record producer basically, and he's the first one to do this. And he had ties to a group, not so good group, the KKK, the Tennessee White Knights. There's also a doctrine propagated by the guy named William Branham, 1909. It was the serpent seed doctrine that he brought into the Ku Klux Klan, and it was a hate doctrine. Nothing new. It was a Gnostic doctrine that was propagated in the 1st century. Arianus, he wrote against this and is against heresies. These doctrines are they're not new. There's Gnostic doctrines that float around that causes division, errors, and it's crazy. So let's talk about their Nondays. In lunar Sabbath calendars, the 1st and 30th days of each lunar month are considered non-work days. Neither Sabbath days nor regular work days These days are referred to as transition days or non-days, acting as a bridge between the Sabbath or the next week of work. Some interpretations of the lunar Sabbath calendar also include new moon days as non-work days, particularly if the next new moon does not follow the 29th day, extending the non-work period. This is not biblical in the slightest. Here's some diagrams of what they believe. You can see the new moon, and then they're trying to establish the Sabbath on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th with 2 transition days, depending if there's 30 or 31 days in that month. Here's a diagram of the 2 different groups. One's for the 8th, 15th, 22nd, 29th, and like I said, 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th with other groups. So when a month has 30 or 31 days, lunar Sabbatarians count them as transitional days of the moon. In other words, they do not count. Like new moon days, the 30th and 31st are non-days to lunar Sabbatarians. The concept of non-days is not supported by scripture nor historical evidence. The consistent weekly cycle, independent of lunar phases, has been the standard throughout history and is affirmed by the biblical narrative, emphasizing the Sabbath as the 7th day of a continuous 7-day cycle. Transition days are nowhere in the Bible, and they're not biblical at all. The concept of extended worship days to align the lunar Sabbath calendar with the moon is not mentioned anywhere in the Bible. The Hebrew calendar, while using the moon to determine months, maintains a continuous weekly cycle. The beginning of a new month, marked by the new moon, does not reset the weekly cycle. And like I said earlier, God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. So let's start in the beginning, the very beginning. So the sun was given so that we could count days from morning to morning. If you're still doing the evening to evening Sabbath, please watch the day dawning video because it completely refutes that claim. Genesis 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth was without form and void, and the darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. That was the first day he brought forth light, begot light, right? That was 3 days before the sun and the moon were created. Okay, that wasn't until day 4, as we see here. Verse 14, and God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night. And let there be for signs and for seasons," Moedim, that's where you get that word Moed, Moedim, okay? These seasons are monthly seasons. Then you reckon your feast days according to the numbering after that. And we're going to make the divide in Leviticus 23 on Sabbath is a feast day. It absolutely is, but it tells you how to reckon for that feast day. There's a divide in verse 4. It says, "And for days and years, and let them be for lights in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made 2 great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night. And he made the stars also, and God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and the evening and the morning were the 4th day. This is how he ends each day. Like, so day 1, he does work. There's evening, there's morning. That was the ending of that first day. The day dawns. The sun comes up. He starts to do work again. That's how your day starts. When the day dawning it's a more sure word of prophecy. 1 Peter 1:19. Genesis 2, verse 1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the 7th day he ended his work which he had made, the 7th Yom. And he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the 7th day. He sanctified it. He hallowed it and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which he had created and made. So now we got to go to Jubilees for this, because it's just so incriminating. It really lets you know. So if you're reckoning your Sabbath according to the moon was not created till day 4. But we see in Jubilees that the angels in heaven were keeping the Sabbath from the beginning. So how are they reckoning that? And we'll go through Exodus 16, where he establishes this covenant and this counting cycle with the Israelites coming out of Egypt. But Genesis 2:9, it's Jubilees 2:9. And God appointed the sun to be a great sign on the earth for days, and for Sabbaths, and for months and feasts, and for feasts, and for years, and for Sabbaths of years, and for jubilees, and for all seasons of the years. Every bit of the sun, moon, and stars is like a time clock. Okay, the Sabbath is for weeks. It's the weeks. And we'll get into the wording on that, establishing that. But if you keep reading in Jubilees 2, verse 16, it says, "And he finished all his work on the sixth day, that in the heavens and on the earth, and in the seas, and in the abysses, and the light, and the darkness, and in everything. And he gave us a great sign, the Sabbath day, that we should work 6 days, but keep the Sabbath on the seventh day from all work. And all the angels of the presence, and all the angels of sanctification, these two great classes, he hath bidden to us to keep the Sabbath with him in heaven and on earth." The angels are keeping this Sabbath. This is the beginning. Okay, in the beginning, they were keeping the Sabbath. It wasn't reckoned by the moon. This is the very beginning. And he said to us, "Behold, I will separate unto myself a people from among all peoples, and they shall keep the Sabbath day, and I will sanctify them unto myself as my people. And I will bless them, as I have sanctified the Sabbath day, and do sanctify it unto myself. Even so will I bless them, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God. And I have chosen the seed of Jacob from amongst all that I have seen, and I have written him down as my firstborn son, and sanctified him unto myself forever and ever. And I will teach them the Sabbath day, that they may keep the Sabbath thereon from all work. And thus he created therein a sign in accordance with which they should keep the Sabbath with us on the seventh day, to eat and to drink, and to bless him who has created all things, as he has blessed and sanctified unto himself a peculiar people above all peoples, and that they should keep Sabbath together with us. And he caused his commands to ascend as a sweet savor, acceptable before him all the days." So we establish a matter, not the 18, but by the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, and we're going to establish that over and over and over again. We're going to refute these claims. So where does the commandment come in? We're going to give the commandment two times. He spoke the 10 commandments, the Holy Covenant. Exodus 20, Deuteronomy 5. So Exodus 20 is throughout the Exodus, and we're going to establish the counting in Exodus 16 right after this. And then he re-spoke these words. The second instruction, like Deuteronomy, means second instruction, second telling, second law to the Israelites before they came into the land, to make sure they had this. But Exodus 20, "Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. 6 days thou shalt labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of Jehovah thy God." This is the command. Work 6 days. Seventh day rest. That's the command, the instruction. Anything varying from that command is an error. If you have to have non-days, transition days, or extended worship days, you're disobeying the command, and you're disobeying the sign and this perpetual covenant. Exodus 31:17 says, "In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days, 6 yom, though Jehovah made the heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them. And he rested the seventh day, wherewith Jehovah blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it." It's a perpetual count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, Sabbath. There was no pagan names attached to these days. It was always accounting. The only one he titled was Sabbath. It's the Sabbath of rest, Sabbaton. So, there is no 1-day work weeks. There are no 2-day weekly Sabbaths. Thus, the lunar Sabbath has a week that is screwed up every single month. The lunar Sabbath creates an interruption in this pattern every month. There is no 1 week that is at the beginning of the month where you work for more than 6 days, and 1 week at the end of the month where you work less than 6 days. All right, before we get into Exodus 16 and the establishing of the count for as far as the cycle for the Sabbath and teaching them how to keep the Sabbath for 40 years in the wilderness, we're going to go through a little bit of the good news, the gospel message, and it involves the Holy Covenant. So he remembers his promise to Abraham. He pulls the Israelites, the seed of Jacob, out of Egypt through this Exodus, okay? 40 years, he teaches them how to keep the Sabbath. But we're going to start in Luke, and this is Zacharias, John the Baptist's father. And it says, his father, Zacharias, was filled with the Holy Ghost and prophesying, saying, Blessed be Jehovah God of Israel, for he hath visited and redeemed his people, and he hath raised up an horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David, as he spake by the mouth of all of his holy prophets, which have been since the world began, that we should be saved from our enemies, and from the hand of all that hate us, to perform the mercy promised to our fathers, and to remember his holy covenant, the oath which he sware to our father Abraham. So, and, Yeshua says, go learn what this means. I'll have mercy, not sacrifice. And then, learn what that means. It's Hosea 6:6. It says, I prefer mercy, not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. But they, like men, have transgressed the covenant. Which covenant? The Holy Covenant. This is the good news. The refreshing of the 10 Commandments, which is Isaiah 28:12. Says this is the rest to cause the weary to rest, and the refreshing, yet they would not hear, quoting Acts 3:19 to the end, which quotes Deuteronomy 18:15 through 18. That's the gospel message. So we know that this oath, this promise, and this holy covenant was given at the rock at Horeb, the life-giving water. Psalms 105 paints this whole beautiful story. Read the whole chapter if you guys can, but I'm just going to read a few parts of it. It says, O ye seed of Abraham, his servant, ye children of Jacob, his chosen. He is Jehovah our God. His judgments are in all the earth. He hath remembered his covenant forever, the word which he commanded to 1,000 generations, which covenant he made with Abraham, and his oath unto Isaac. And he confirmed the same unto Jacob for a law, and to Israel for an everlasting covenant, saying, Unto thee will I give the land of Canaan, the lot of your inheritance, when they were but few men in number, yea, very few, and strangers in it. Psalms 105, verse 41. He opened the rock, and the waters gushed out. They ran in dry places like a river, for he remembered his holy promise, and Abraham, his servant. This is the Holy Covenant, the 10 Commandments. Jubilees 2 recap. Okay, so before we get into establishing their counting in the wilderness, and we already read this, but I'll read it again. It says, And I have chosen the seed of Jacob from amongst all that I have seen, and have written to him down as my firstborn son, and have sanctified him unto myself forever and ever. And I will teach them the Sabbath day, that they may keep the Sabbath thereon from all work. Where did he teach it? Exodus 16. We're going to see 40 years they were in the wilderness doing the same cycle over and over and over again to make sure that it was ingrained in them. We have not lost that count. Exodus 16:26. 6 days thou shalt gather the manna. He's raining the manna, right? But on the 7th day, which is the Sabbath, there will be none. So we are told on the 6th day there was extra manna given for the people to store up and eat on the Sabbath day. Verse 29. See, for Jehovah has given you the Sabbath. Therefore he gives you on the 6th day bread for 2 days. Let every man remain in his place. Let no man go out of his place on the 7th day. We're establishing this counting. 6 days you gather manna. There's a double portion on the 6th day. 7th day you gather none. And right here in verse 35, this went on for 40 years. And the children of Israel ate manna 40 years until they came into the inhabited land. They ate manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. So now let's see how the lunar Sabbath lines up with this. Was manna provided on the 1st and the 30th days of each month? Was there an indication that extra manna would be given at the end of the month to supply for those non-days? Or are those days meant to be fasting days? It doesn't say anything like that, does it? If the lunar Sabbath is true, then God must have failed to mention such details as concerning the transition days between each month. The manna instructions establish a continuous, uninterrupted 7-day cycle that causes no questions about what to do when the month starts over, because the Sabbath doesn't reset each month, just the week. The manna would appear on the ground every day except the seventh day, the day of rest. This sequence would repeat every 7 days over and over for 40 years. The weekly cycle of manna only stopped when Israel entered the Promised Land. 4 decades of repetition is plenty of time to clearly establish which day was the day of rest. And Jubilees 2 says, I'm going to teach them my Sabbath. And he did. So the Sabbath rest for the land and Jubilee years also incorporated this same exact rhythm. Exodus 23, in 6 years thou shalt sow thy land, and shalt gather the fruits thereof. But the 7th year thou shalt let it rest and lie still, that the poor of the people may eat, and what they leave the beast of the field shall eat. In like manner thou shalt deal with the vineyard, or with thy vineyard, and with thy olive yard. 6 days thou shalt do thy work, and on the 7th day thou shalt rest. That thine ox and thy ass may rest, and the son of thy handmaid and the stranger may be refreshed. Same cycle, same counting. Exodus 31, 13 through 17. Speak thou unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am Jehovah, that does sanctify you. Ye shall keep the Sabbath therefore, for it is holy unto you. Everyone that defileth it shall surely be put to death. For whosoever do any work therein, that soul shall be cut off from among this people. 6 days may work be done, but in the 7th is the Sabbath of rest, holy to Jehovah. Whosoever doeth any work in the Sabbath day, he shall surely be put to death. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations for a perpetual covenant. That's eternal. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. Olam, forever. For in 6 days Jehovah made the heavens and the earth, and on the 7th day he rested and was refreshed. He's so serious about this Sabbath day that people were put to death because of it. He's establishing a covenant. 6 days you work. 7th day we rest, just as he did. There's no Nondays, transition days. There's none of that. Exodus 34:21 says, 6 days thou shalt work, but on the 7th day thou shalt rest. In earing time and in harvest thou shalt rest. Exodus 35, 6 days shall work be done, but on the 7th day there shall be to a holy day, a Sabbath of rest to Jehovah. Whosoever doeth work therein shall be put to death. He shall kindle no fire throughout your habitations upon the Sabbath day. There's more than 2 or 3 witnesses. We're getting the same repetition through extra biblicals, through the canon. 6 days you work. It's a perpetual covenant. 7th day you rest, and if it veers from that counting, then you're in error, and it's a very shaky ground to be on, man. It's a scary ground to be on, and I suggest you guys. All right, this is a very important verse. Deuteronomy 4, verse 2. You shall not add unto the word which I command you, neither shall you diminish aught from it, that you may keep the commandments of Jehovah your God which I command you. 3 times it tells us, do not add to the word or diminish from it. Once here, once at the end of Deuteronomy 12, and once in Proverbs. What's important is in between Deuteronomy 4 and 12. Deuteronomy 5 is the Holy Covenant. Verse 22 says he added no more. Deuteronomy 6 tells us how to love God. Deuteronomy 12 tells us where to do the feast and where not to. Where he establishes his name, do not do what's right in your own eyes. So a lot of people in the Torah community are adding to the word or diminishing from the Torah instructions, doing what's right in their own eyes. And you know, there's so many prophecies against this. It's just insane. They're adding a lot to the Torah instructions, but now we have people adding to the Holy Covenant in Deuteronomy 5. They're twisting his Sabbath day instructions, and it really is frustrating. So let's talk about this Moedim. This word Moed or Moedim. The annual appointed feast days of Israel are set according to the numerical days of the month, i.e., the 14th of Nisan is Passover. 15th of Nisan is the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, a feast that lasts 7 days. It's basically your new month comes, whatever month is, then you count the days from that month for that feast, and we're going to make the differentiate from the Sabbath and the feast days. It says, notice in Leviticus 23, it gives instructions for each feast day being counted after a certain amount of days of a certain month or new moon cycle. But we don't see this for the Sabbath instructions. It is strictly a counting of days. Nowhere in the Bible is the Sabbath referred to as the seventh day of the month. Now here's the switch, and people don't get this. Leviticus 23, starting in verse 2. Speak unto the children of Israel, and say to them concerning the feast of Jehovah, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, Moedim. Even these are my feast. First feast is the Sabbath, absolutely a feast day, and I treat it as such every Saturday. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest, and holy convocation, an appointed time, a Moedim. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of Jehovah in all your dwellings. Okay, so this appointed time, we are given instructions on how to count it. 6 days work, seventh day rest. Here's the switch. Now it goes to the 7 biblical appointed feast in their seasons. We'll see that. These are the feast of Jehovah, even holy convocations, Moedim, appointed times, which ye shall proclaim in their seasons. That's the difference. In their seasons, in their months. According to the month counting, the new moon, then you count the days. That is not how you do it for the Sabbath day. In the 14th day of the first month, even as Jehovah's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto Jehovah. 7 days ye must eat unleavened bread. In the first day ye shall have a holy convocation, appointed time. Ye shall do no servile work therein, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto Jehovah 7 days. In the 7th day is a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein. There is a huge switch, and people don't see that from verse 3 and verse 4. Psalms 104. He appointed the moon for seasons, as we said, in their seasons, right? Moed, appointed times. The sun knoweth is going down. Thou makest darkness, and it is night, wherein all the beasts of the forest do creep forth. The young lions roar after their prey, and seek their meat from God. The sun ariseth, they gather themselves together, and lay down there in their dens. Then goeth forth unto his work, and do all his labor until evening. Ecclesiasticus 43, and it drives it home even more. He made the moon also to serve in their season for a declaration of times, and the sign of the world. The moon is the sign of feast. What I say, in their seasons for the 7 biblical feast days. A light that decreases in her perfection. The month is called after her name, increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmament of heaven. The annual appointed feast days are set according to the numerical days of the month. 14th, we already read that. So let's talk about counting of the Omer. This just completely, it just destroys this entire claim, This continuous cycle of days is what allows us to accurately count the Omer. 7 weeks plus 1 day, that equals 50. The first fruits to Shavuot. Imagine trying to count to 50 using a lunar Sabbatarian calendar. 2 and sometimes 3 Nondays every month. The command. Leviticus 23, once again, verse 15. Ye shall count unto you from the morrow, after the Sabbath, from the day that you are brought the sheaf from the wave offering. 7 Sabbaths shall be complete, even unto the morrow. After the 7th Sabbath shall you number 50 days. That's where you get the word Pentecost. Penta is 50. And you shall offer a new meat offering unto Jehovah. So determining the Passover, first fruits day does not work. First fruits always lands on a Sunday or the first day after the first Sabbath following the Passover. In the lunar Sabbath perspective, it would always fall on the same day, if the day after the Sabbath or the 16th of Aviv. If that were the case, why didn't Jehovah make the firm date instead of saying the day after the Sabbath? He would have just said the 16th. So 7 Sabbaths equals 50 days, or it's 49 plus the extra day, not 52 like the lunar Sabbath would give you. You don't need any calendar to keep track of a 7-day cycle. That's exactly what happened. We know that the historical 7th day in the first century was Saturday. Nothing ever changed that. We'll go through the historical references on that in the writings. This continuous cycle of days is what allows us to accurately count the Omer. 7 weeks plus 1 day that equals 50. And we already read this as well. But so lunar Sabbath reckoning for Pentecost. And they have, this is crazy what they do. It just throws everything off. The timing of Pentecost can also be reckoned in a way that aligns with the lunar Sabbath calendar. This is because Leviticus 23, verse 15 through 16 can be interpreted as instruction to first count 7 Sabbaths and then 50 days. The phrase even unto in the KJV can be interpreted such that the count of 50 days should begin after the 7 Sabbaths are complete. This results in Pentecost being reckoned in the 4th month of the calendar instead of the 3rd. There is a second place in Scripture that describes the reckoning of Pentecost is Deuteronomy 16, verse 9, which does not do so as ambiguously as Leviticus 23. It's very straightforward. Deuteronomy 16, verse 9 through 10 says, 7 weeks thou shalt number unto thee. Begin to number the 7 weeks from such time as thou beginnest to put the sickle to the corn. And thou shalt keep the feast of weeks unto Jehovah thy God with a tribute of a freewill offering of thine hand. And thou shalt give unto Jehovah thy God according to as Jehovah thy God hath blessed thee. So this passage clearly does not specify 7 weeks and then 50 days. It only requires the counting of 7 weeks. Therefore, the interpretation of Leviticus 23, 15 through 16 must refer to counting 7 weeks or 50 days, which is not possible on the lunar Sabbath at all. The biblical year begins with the sighting of the first new moon after that barley in Israel reaches Aviv, the ripeness. Sadly, lunar Sabbatarians miss this real 7th-day Sabbath each week, and when they try to add an additional 50 to it, then they're completely missing the season. So the difference between weekly Sabbath and high Sabbath. So you're going to see Shabbat, and then there's going to be Shabbaton, which is going to be for the high Sabbaths. So let's look at an example in Scripture where the moon is not used to determine the Moadim. So they're establishing, okay, it has to be like the weekly Sabbath, like we went through in Leviticus 23. It has to be for the Moadim, for the counting of the weekly Sabbath. But no, there's a lot of examples where we use this. And I'll just pull up one. Judges 20:38. Now there was an appointed sign, a Moed, between the men of Israel and the liars in wait, that they should make a great flame with smoke rise up out of the city. There's a appointed sign. This is Moed. It wasn't by the moon. It was by the fire. Okay. All right. Holes in the hypothesis. So we're going to bring forth some historical writings to kind of drive this point home. Rosh Chodesh, the new moon, or Rosh Chodesh, determines each new month. But make no mistake, if one month ends on the 4th day of the weekly cycle, the new month will begin on the 5th day of the weekly cycle, regardless of whether you're using the Hebrew names for the days of the week, day 1, day 2, day 3, etc., or pagan names. The sequence remains unbroken. And we know that every one of these days are renamed to these pagan deities, just like, in Jerusalem or in Israel, they have the Jews have named their months according to like Tammuz and stuff like that. And people was like, oh, well, it was named after Saturn's day. Guess what? So was it Thursday after Thursday. Like every one of the days of the week are named after a pagan deity, and it doesn't bring any more validity to that that doctrine just because of the names of the days. So Cassius wrote that the Romans who learned that the Jews rested on the days of Saturn, Saturday, which was known as Saturn's Day in Rome, attacked the Jerusalem stronghold on those days. Similar to the words of the historian Cassius Dio, this Roman soldier equated the day of rest, Sabbath, of the Jews to the day of Saturn, Saturday, which was known as Saturn's Day in Rome. So the Greek word, Sabbaton, this is Sabbath in English, is the word used for Saturday all across the world. So let's look at some of the different languages. So Arabic, as Sabt, Armenian, Shabbat, a literal, just exact wording of Sabbath in Hebrew, Shabbat. If you want you guys to scroll through these, every single, all across the world, this is Saturday. Every language. It's not on a different name for different days of the week. He made it easy for us to either keep a Saturday, worship Jehovah. Sunday, no worshiping sun deities and corrupted transliterations. Jesus is made him an idol. It's idolatry. So this shameful fact that in English, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday are named for pagan gods changes nothing. Sunday is day 1, Monday, day 2, Tuesday, day 3, etc. Until you get to Saturday, which is God's 7th day. It's Jehovah's 7th day. Luke 4:16 tells us that Yeshua's custom was going to the synagogue every Sabbath day. He goes in there. He says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to preach the glad tidings," quoting Isaiah 61. And there was no refuting on which day that was, especially from these historical references coming back to the 1st century. So week means 7. In Hebrew, the number 7 and the word translated week are both rooted in the same Hebrew root verb, which simply means 7. H7620. Shabua. Okay, what's it mean? Week. 7. Week. It doesn't mean like sometimes 8 days, sometimes 6 days. It is a week. It means 7. That's God's perfect number. And the theological workbook of the Old Testament states, Shabua, period of 7, a week, the Feast of Weeks, 7, right? The term occurs 20 times in the Old Testament, always indicating a period of 7. The word comes from Sheba and could literally be translated always as 7, period. So Sheba, it means 7 times. The number 7, Shabua, another form of the same word. All right, did the change to the Gregorian calendar in 1582 lose track of the 7th day? And you know, so many people, we know that the calendar was changed. We get that. But it did not mess up the 7-day cycle. It did not lose the count. We'll establish that. What most people do not understand is that the amount of days dropped from the Julian calendar when it was changed to the Gregorian calendar did not in any way affect the 7-day week. In other words, even though 10 days were removed from the calendar, it did not affect the individual days, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, etc. From 46 BC up to 1582 AD, the Western world used what is called the Julian calendar. It was a vast improvement over the previous Roman calendars because it finally kept the months in sync with the seasons. However, after many centuries, even the Julian calendar was about 10 days out of sync with the solar system. In 1582, the old Julian calendar was replaced with the new, improved Gregorian calendar, which is the calendar system we still use today. At the time of the change to the new moon or the new calendar system, those 10 days were simply dropped out of the calendar to get the dating system of the calendar back in sync with the solar system. It was Thursday, October 4th, 1582, and the next day, Friday, should have been October 5th. However, the new calendar made the next day October 15th instead. That change had no impact on the 7-day weekly cycle. Whether that following Friday was numbered as the 5th of the month or the 15th of the month, it was still the 6th day of the week, and the day that followed was still the 7th day of the week. The sequencing of the days of the week, Sunday through Saturday, never changed. Here's a quote taken from ecclesia.org. The calendar, which continued in use for 15 centuries, was not accurate in length of its year, for it was a quarter hour too long. In 1582, it was 10 days off. Pope Gregory initiated a change in the calendar by going to the Gregorian calendar to make up for the error in the Julian calendar. 10 days were added. In October 1582, Thursday the 4th was the following Friday after the 15th. In Italy and a few other countries, England and America changed its calendar in 1752 and Russia finally in 1914. Yet the weekly cycle was never affected. All right, speaking of the calendar, there's so many people thinking that they restored the calendar and they got it figured out from the Zadok calendar. There's 6 different calendars floating around. They all think they got it figured out, but I assure you, you don't. And you're trying to restore to keep these feasts, and you think that you're going to figure it out. And the scripture tells you that you won't, because we went in error and we've been in error. People are trying to do the feast, and is specifically Deuteronomy 4, 3 different times. These are the statutes and judgments to do in the land, in the land, in the land. Deuteronomy 12, very beginning. These are the statutes and judgments to do in the land. Do not do what's right in your own eyes. He only do it where he places his name, which is in Jerusalem. He says 3 different times this is where he places his name forever. But people are trying to restore a calendar that he confounded. He did not confound his 7th-day Sabbath, because this is a sign for us to keep his holy covenant between him and his people. But he took away his tabernacle. He took away his feast days. He confounded this calendar. And anyone that thinks that they've restored it, I assure you, you're wrong. Jubilee 6. And he commanded thou the children of Israel that they may observe the years according to this reckoning, 364 days. Lunar Sabbatarians are going on 354 days, and Enoch and Jubilees says that they will go in error because of these things for making observations of the moon. And these will constitute a complete year, and they will not disturb its time from its days and from its feast, for everything will fall out in them according to their testimony. And they will not leave out any day, nor disturb any feast. But if they do neglect to do this, and do not observe them according to his commandment, then they will disturb all their seasons, and the years will be dislodged from this order. And they will disturb the seasons, and the years will be dislodged, and they will neglect their ordinances, and all the children of Israel will forget, and will not, hear me read that again, and will not find the path of the years, and will forget the new moons, and seasons, and Sabbaths, and will go wrong as to all the order of the years. For I know, and henceforth will I declare it unto thee, and it is not of my own devising. For the book lies written before me, and on the heavenly tablets the division of the days is ordained, lest they forget the feast of the covenant, and walk according to the feast of the Gentiles after their error and after their ignorance. Christmas, Easter, we all did it. For there will be those who will assuredly make observations of the moon, how it disturbs the season, comes in from year to year, 10 days too soon. For this reason, the years will come upon them when they will disturb the order, and make an abominable day the day of testimony, and an unclean day a feast day, as so many people are doing right now in a polluted land like America. And they will confound all the days, the holy with the unclean, and the unclean day with the holy. For they will go wrong as to the months and Sabbaths and feasts and jubilees. For this reason I command and testify to thee, that thou mayest testify to them. For after thy death thy children will disturb them, and they will not make the year 364 days only. For this reason they will go wrong as to the new moons and seasons and Sabbaths and festivals. And they will eat all kinds of blood and all kinds of flesh, just as we see all across the world. Enoch 72 gives a second witness to this. It's supposed to be 364 days. And on that day, the night decreases the amounts of 9 parts, and the day to 9 parts. And the night is equal to the day, and the year is exactly to its days 364. The lunar year has about 354 days. This is because a lunar month or lunation is about 29.5 days long. And the lunar year is made up of 12 lunations. If you keep the lunar calendar, you will be 10 days off, just as Jubilees prophesied. Walked right into it. Enoch 80. And in those days, the angel Uriel answered and said to me, Behold, I have shown thee everything. Enoch, I have revealed everything to thee that thou shouldest see this sun and this moon and the leaders of the stars of the heaven and all those who turn them, their task and their time and departures. And in the days of the sinners, the year shall be shortened, and their seed shall be tardy on their lands and fields, and all things on the earth shall be alter, and shall not appear in their time, and the rain shall be kept back, and the heaven shall withhold it. And in those times the fruits of the earth shall be backward. Everything's out of order. He did this. And shall not grow in their time, and the fruits of the trees shall be withheld in their time. And the moon shall alter her order, and not appear at her time. And in those days shall the sun be seen, and shall journey in the evening on the extremity of the great chariot of the west, and shall shine more brightly than accords with the order of the light. And many chiefs of the stars shall transgress the order prescribed, and these shall alter their orbits and task, and not appear at the seasons prescribed to them. If you guys getting what I'm laying down here? And the whole order of stars shall be concealed from the sinners. And the thoughts of those on the earth shall err concerning them. And they shall be altered from all their ways. Yea, they shall err, and take them for to be gods. And evil shall be multiplied upon them, and punishment shall come upon them, so as to destroy them all. He confounded the calendar. You guys will not figure it out, I assure you that. All right, let's talk about some deeper level prophecy as far as those that are the many called, but few chosen. Right now, we're in the time of God's wrath. You know, America is going to be destroyed. Jerusalem's going to be destroyed. And all these things are going to be coming upon us very, very shortly. We're woken up for a reason. All these people are trying to restore their calendar, trying to do the feast and do all these things. And, you know, I was one of them. I thought that was what I was woken up for, what I was called to. No. Amos 3:7. God does nothing before he reveals his secret to his servants, the prophets. First, the lion is roared, who will prophesy. This is quoting Revelation 10. This roll sweet in your mouth, bitter in your belly, which is quoting Ezekiel 2:3, which is the watchman calling. He woke us up to warn people to get into covenant before he destroys this place. Now, there's a spiritual condition of people that are blessing themselves before the wedding supper, thinking they can restore these things, blowing these physical shofars instead of sounding the word of God, and they're feeding their own bellies. And this is Isaiah 56, the dumb dog watchman lying down, loving to slumber. There is a spiritual condition. Jacob, my servant, are the ones entering into this work. Now let's read some deeper prophecy in regards to these people, and they're biting on the wind of Judah with one, the evening to evening Sabbath reckoning that they've stolen from Judaism, and is false, I assure you. Amos 6:3 from the Septuagint, it says, those who come near the day of evil, which is tribulation, who draw near and touch the false Sabbaths. I'm going to speak of this as a dual message. One, the lunar Sabbatarians. Two, the dusk to dusk. Those who lie on ivory beds and stretch themselves out on their couches and eat lambs. Pay attention to that word because we'll go to Hosea after this. From the flock and the calves of the midst of the stall, who sing to the sound of the harp, as if they were in a good place, and do not grieve, who drink the refined wine, and anoint themselves with the finest oils, but are not pained at all by the ruin of Joseph. In Matthew 23, when Yeshua rebukes the Pharisees, he calls them hypocrites. He says they left out the weightier matters of the law: judgment, mercy, and faith. Royal law, covenant, and the faith of Yeshua, which James 2:1 says, have not the faith of Yeshua with respect to persons. Goes on to teach us to love thy neighbor as thyself, is to warn your neighbor, to rebuke the sin out of your neighbor. But they were counted as a strange thing, as we're going to see here in Hosea 8. By Ephraim, which is America, we established that idiom going back to Genesis 37, 48, 49. Isaiah 28, woe to the crown of pride, the drunkards of Ephraim. This is America. Then we learn in Isaiah 47, 48, Jeremiah 50, 51, Revelation 17 and 18, this is Mystery Babylon, falls in a day and an hour. He woke us up to warn our brothers and sisters. It's a high calling. We are not here to restore calendars or start feasting prior to the wedding supper. If Yeshua is not eating or drinking from that supper until the day everything's consummated in the kingdom, why would we be doing that? So because America has made many altars to sin, altars shall be unto him to sin. We all did Christmas. We all did Easter. I have written to him the great things of my law, but they are counted as a strange thing, like Deuteronomy 16:16. 3 times a year, all males must go before he places his name to do these feasts. Jerusalem, that they're a strange thing. The guy says to Yeshua, good master, what's the great things written in the law? Love God, love your neighbor, which means keeping covenant, Deuteronomy 6, and rebuking the sin out of your neighbor, Leviticus 19:15-18. But they're counted as a strange thing. They sacrifice flesh for the sacrifices of mine altar, my offerings. They eat it. What we just read? They're eating the lambs. Every Passover, I see one of these congregations stringing up lambs, making lamb tacos, blessing themselves, stretching themselves on these ivory beds, blowing shofars, enlarging their phylacteries, their seats, loving the best seats at the feast. And they will go into captivity, as we're about to read. But Jehovah accepteth them not. Now will I remember their iniquity and visit their sins. They shall return to Egypt, which means to captivity that's coming to America. For Israel has forgotten his maker, and Judah, and buildeth temples, churches, and Judah hath multiplied fenced cities, Iron Dome. But I will send fire upon his cities, and it shall devour the palaces thereof. Judgment starts at the house of God. Anyone that's not working and warning our brothers and sisters, you're going into captivity, man. You can't be doing these things. You have to rebuke the sin. You have to warn our neighbor, warn our brothers and sisters. Peter tells us, the day of the Lord is 1,000 years, and 1,000 years is a day. You look at Hosea 6:2, it says he tarries for 2 days, and the third day he raises us up. We're at the end of the 2,000 years since Yeshua was crucified. We're right there. We're woken up for a reason. Now let's go through the arguments. The Ezekiel Gate, Ezekiel 46, but I want to start in Ezekiel 43 because everyone misses this, and my buddy Matthew found this just a great find. It says, thou, son of man, show the house to the house of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the pattern. And if, the big if there, they be ashamed of all that they have done, show them the form of the house. Were they ashamed? No, they didn't return. So this was not shown to them, and this third temple will not be built. And the fashion thereof, and the goings out thereof, and the comings in thereof, and all the forms thereof, and all the ordinances thereof, and all the forms thereof, and all the laws thereof, and write it in their sight, that they may keep the whole form thereof, and all the ordinances thereof, and do them. But they were not ashamed. They did not return. Now let's talk about the topic in this Ezekiel 46, this gate. This is the claim. It says, thus says Jehovah God, the gate in the inner court that looketh toward the east shall be shut the 6 working days, but on the Sabbath it shall be opened, and in the day of the new moon it shall be opened. So this is a misinterpretation. Lunar Sabbath proponents interpret Ezekiel 46:1, which states that the gate of the inner court will be shut for 6 working days, but open on the Sabbath and new moon. They infer that this means that the new moon is not part of the week. This is an unwarranted assumption, as the verse simply states when the gate is open or shut. It cannot be true that the first part of Ezekiel 46:1, i.e. the east gate, will always be closed during the 6 working days, is an absolute truth, because that assertion is contradicted by verse 12. Verse 12 reads, now when the prince shall prepare a voluntary burnt offering or peace offering voluntary to Jehovah, one then open him the gate that looketh toward the east, and he shall prepare his burnt offering and his peace offerings as he did on the Sabbath day. Then he shall go forth, and after this going forth, one shall shut the gate. This passage describes the same prince in verse 1 coming to the temple with a voluntary offering. When he arrives, the east gate will be opened, and when he leaves the gate, will be closed. This does not happen on the Sabbath or new moon because the gate is already open when he arrives. Clearly, then, this is another exception to the rule in verse 1. The gate will be closed during the 6 working days. If we add this exception in verse 12 to the details in verse 1, we obtain the following statement. The gate in the inner court that looketh toward the east shall be shut the 6 working days, but on the Sabbath it shall be opened. And in the day of the new moon it shall be opened. And when the prince offers a voluntary burnt offering or peace offering, it shall be opened. By considering both verse 1 and verse 12, it should be clear that the first part of the verse 1, is a rule of thumb and not an absolute truth. Therefore, it cannot be proven that the new moon day is a separate day from the working days in verse 1. Another major problem with applying verse 1 to the lunar Sabbath calendar is that there is no provision for extended worship days. Since the lunar month is approximately 29.5 days long, every second month we will have 30 days instead of 29. The 30th day of the month is an extended worship day, which cannot be considered one of the 6 working days, or a Sabbath, or the new moon day. Unfortunately, Ezekiel 46 does not mention extended worship days at all. It does not define whether the east gate should be open or closed during that day. And this is one of the verses that just cause so much confusion in this doctrine. Another one is Amos 8, the selling of corn. Amos 8:5, saying, "When will the new moon be gone, and that we may sell corn, and the Sabbath that we may set forth wheat, making the ephah small and the shekel great, and falsifying the balances by deceit." And we're going to tell you exactly what feast day this is, and it's in the book of Numbers. So when you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, it doesn't read like that. We're going to read it right now. It's 4Q82, saying, "When will the new moon be gone, that we may be satisfied?" It doesn't read like that in the Masoretic, and that's what's causing confusion. Numbers 29. Numbers 28 is instructions for these new moon celebrations and how to make the offerings. In Numbers 29, it says, "In the 7th month, on the first day of the month," okay, let me read this. It says, "The only new moon commanded to not to do any servile work is this one, right here. It's the Feast of Trumpets. It says, "In the 7th month, on the first day of the month, you shall have an holy convocation of appointed time. You shall do no servile work. It is a day of blowing of trumpets unto you." So there are several feast days that involve abstaining from servile work, also known as ordinary or laborious work. These include the first day of Passover, the 1st and 7th day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, and the Feast of Trumpets, which is the first day of the 7th month. On these days, a holy convocation or a sacred assembly is held, and regular work is prohibited. The 22nd is not a Sabbath in Numbers 10, verse 11, 12, and 33. In contrast with the new moon day, the Sabbath is described extensively throughout the scripture as a non-working day. There are also no scriptures that describe a new moon day as a day of separate from the days of the week. There are scriptures which show that men building, Exodus 20, and traveling in Ezra 7:9 on the new moon day. Also, it is not commanded anywhere that we must rest on any new moon day except the new moon day of the 7th month, which is the Feast of Trumpets. The new moon day on the 7th month, the new moon will be what the scripture alludes to in Amos 8:5, when some couldn't sell their grains on the new moon day. It's exactly the feast that it's speaking of, and I pray that makes sense. All right, now we're going to talk about the Key of David, and a lot of people won't know what this is, but this is a teaching that the people in our congregation will teach, and this is a very important teaching. And it's funny, when I found out that they're trying to use 1 Samuel 20 as a proof text for the lunar Sabbath, I'm like, you literally just nailed your own coffin shut with this argument, because the Key of David specifically shows that the Sabbath was not falling on the 8th, 15th, 22nd, or 29th. When you compare 1 Samuel 20 with Leviticus 24. And we'll go through it. So from the Key of David teaching, we learned that the Sabbath falls on the 3rd day of the month, which refutes the lunar Sabbath doctrine. Here's their claim. Lunar Sabbatarians claim that 1 Samuel 20:18 through 19 shows the pattern of the new moon and the extra days, and that it demonstrates that no commerce or work is to be conducted based on the word business used in the verse. Sadly, Saul was having a meal or banquet, which some say that proves that this is a Sabbath rest. 1 Samuel 20 does not provide evidence for a lunar Sabbath as a specific weekly day of rest, but rather highlights the importance of the new moon as a significant marker in the ancient Hebrew calendar. The text describes the new moon as the start of a new month and a period of celebration and feasting, rather than a weekly day of rest like the Sabbath. Instead of just reading through 1 Samuel 20, I'm going to do a breakdown of what's happening and the counting of these days. 1 Samuel 20, verse 5, mentions that tomorrow is the new moon, indicating the beginning of a new lunar month. New moon celebrations. The text details that Saul was inquiring about David's absence from the meal on the new moon, suggesting a customary feast associated with this lunar event, not a weekly Sabbath. The text does not establish a weekly lunar Sabbath as a day of rest, but rather focuses on the new moon as a distinct event within the lunar cycle. So, in 1 Samuel 20, verse 5, reads, David said to Jonathan, Behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit at the table with the king. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field till the third day at evening. Pay attention to that wording, okay? Then, in 1 Samuel 20, 24 through 25, we read, So David hid himself in the field when the new moon came. The king sat down to eat meat. The king sat upon his seat, as at other times, even upon his seat by the wall. And Jonathan arose, and Abner sat by Saul's side, and David's place was empty. Then we see in verse 34, And Jonathan rose up from the table. This is still day 1, in the heat of anger, and he did not eat food on the second day of the new moon. He fasted on the second day, okay? And he was grieved for David, okay? Day 3 of the month, verse 35. And it came to pass in the morning, Jonathan went into the field at the time appointed. This is the third day of the new month with David. Say, on the appointed third day, verse 42. Jonathan bids David to go in peace, declaring that Jehovah's name was between them and their seed forever. And in the very next verse, David goes to Nob, where he talks to Ahimelech, the priest, who trembles and asks him, Why are you by yourself, and no man with you? David answers in verse 2, The king has commanded me a matter. He said, Do not let a man know anything of the matter about which I am sending you. Then in verse 3, David asked the priest for bread. This is the key of David teaching. This is verse 4 says, There is no common bread under my hand, only holy bread. This is the showbread. When the priest inquires if David and his young men have kept themselves from women, which would have rendered them ceremonially unclean, David replies in verse 5, Surely a woman has been kept from us 3 days since I came out, and the vessels of the young men are holy, and the bread is in the manner common, although it was sanctified this day in the vessel. Okay, that day, 3 days. When what did David mean when he said the bread was in a manner common? The answer is found in the next verse, verse 6. He says, And the priest gave the holy bread to him, and there was no bread except the bread of the presence, which is taken from the presence of Jehovah, in order to put hot bread on the day of is taken away. And on what day does the old bread get replaced with the new bread? It happens every Sabbath day. Leviticus 24. Every Sabbath he shall set it, the showbread, in order before Jehovah, continually being taken from the children of Israel by an everlasting covenant, and it shall be with Aaron and his sons, and they shall eat it, the replaced showbread, in the holy place, for it is holy unto him, of the offerings of Jehovah made by fire, by a perpetual covenant. Third day was the Sabbath day, is proving They use it as a valid text to try to prove the lunar Sabbath, but it just shoots them in the foot. This verse clearly established that the day on which the new moon is spotted is counted as day 1 of each new month. It is not a non-day. This particular first weekly Sabbath of the month on which David and the men ate the outgoing showbread did not fall on the 8th day of the month, nor the 7th day. The first weekly Sabbath of the new month fell on the 3rd day. What is the key of David? We're going to go to Matthew 12 for this. This is a 3-day sexual fast. He said, have you been kept from your wives for 3 days? Yes. It's a sexual fast for priests and the men, the armies, to do the will of the Father, to be able to work and do these things on the Sabbath day without polluting it. Matthew 12. At that time, Yeshua went on a Sabbath day through the corn, and his disciples were an hungered, and began to pluck the ears of corn, and to eat it. But when the Pharisees saw it, they said unto him, Behold, thy disciples do that which is not lawful to do upon the Sabbath day. But he said unto them, Have ye not read what David did, when he was a hungered, and they that were with him, how he entered into the house of God, and did eat the showbread, which was not lawful for them to eat, neither for them that which were with them, but only for the priest? Or have ye not read in the law, how that on the Sabbath days the priests of the temple profane the Sabbath and are blameless? But I say unto you, that in this place is one greater than the temple. But if you had known what this meaneth, I will have mercy and not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the guiltless. For the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath day. This is a 3-day sexual fast, and Paul tells us it has to be an agreement to do this fast, but this is where the holy bread is given. This is extra sanctification of your body, your vessel, leading into the Sabbath. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, no sexual relations with your wife. This is called the key of David. So you can do things that you weren't not usually able to do. If you're out there ministering to someone on the Sabbath day and you have to make a purchase of a water, but you're doing the service of Jehovah, you can do these things. So he also says, learn what this means. I'll have mercy, not sacrifice. And like I said earlier, quoting Hosea 6:6, says, I will have mercy, not sacrifice, and the knowledge of God more than burnt offerings. They, like men, have transgressed the covenant. So we're also seeing this quoting, Psalms 51 is imperative for this. He wants mercy, not sacrifice, but he wants us with a humble and contrite heart. They're going to tremble at his word. He says, teach me my transgressions so I can teach others. This is why the Spirit of truth is coming to the world. John 16 says, the Spirit of truth came into the world to reprove the world of sin. When you tie that with Psalms 51, you see that it's to love thy neighbor as thyself. Romans 13, Galatians 5. We have to take the plank out of our eye so that we can properly see to pull the speck out of our brother's eye. He wants us to judge righteously off of his righteousness. Psalms 119, 172 says his commandments are his righteousness. Deuteronomy 6, verse 25 says, if we keep these commandments, apply these, it will be accounted to our righteousness. All right, Rome's 8 days. Another fatal assumption made by lunar Sabbatarians is Rome had an 8-day week. So Jews of the first century could not have kept the correct 7th-day Sabbath. They ignored the historical fact that between 17 BCE and 14 CE, Rome also used a 7-day planetary week calendar. Let's go through some historical writings here. Here's a quote from Sunday in Roman Paganism by Robert Leo Odom. In 1795 were found the marble fragments of which is known as the Sabine calendar, Fasti Sabini, in a place in central Italy. The portions represent the months of September and October in the Julian calendar. The experts in this type of archaeological find have declared them to belong to the reign of Augustus Caesar and to have been used between 19 BCE and 4 CE. Here's another quote. This one is from a famous first in the ancient and Greek world. It is found under the heading First Reference to a 7-Day Week. It states, an inscription dated between 19 BCE and 14 CE, preserving the remains of the Sabine calendar is the earliest known public record of a 7-day week. Israel's Jews influenced the world, not the other way around. Here's a quote from the first century historian Flavius Josephus. in his book Against Apion, book 2, and it says, the multitude of mankind itself has had a great inclination for a long time to follow our religious observance. For there is not any city of the Grecians, nor any of the barbarians, nor any nation whatsoever, whither our custom of resting on the seventh day hath not come. So here's from Dio Cassius, volume 8, says, thus was Jerusalem destroyed on the very day of Saturn, the day which even the Jews reverence most. Here's from Julius Frontinus. It says, the defined Vespasian attacked the Jews on the day of Saturn, a day in which it was sinful for them to do any business, and so defeated them. But we learn in the what's it called? The Maccabean book, that they searched the scriptures, and I guarantee what they found was the key of David, finding out how they could fight on the Sabbath day without polluting it. So from Hastings' Encyclopedia of Religion on Ethics, page 63 says, the Babylonians appear to have observed a Sabbath on every seventh day on the lunar month, and it is probable that this usage was originally connected with the 4 quarters of the moon. Among the Jews, the 7 days week was reckoned independently of the moon. They didn't use the moon to do this. But in Babylon, there's multiple records that they kept. The Babylonians would keep it on the 7th, the 14th, 21st, and 28th. So, like I said, he doesn't want us feasting. He doesn't want us to do any of this stuff. And Isaiah 1 is very revealing. It says, bring no more vain oblations. Incense is an abomination unto me. The new moons and high Sabbaths, the calling of assemblies, I cannot away with. It is iniquity, even the solemn meeting. Your new moons and your appointed feasts, my soul hateth. They are a trouble unto me. I am weary to bear them. And when you spread forth your hands, I will hide mine eyes from you. Yea, when you make many prayers, I will not hear you. Your hands are full of blood. Okay, this is exactly what Psalms 51, Ezekiel 2, 3, and 33 are about. Warning people. If we don't warn them or rebuke the sin, we got blood on our hands. And he woke us up for a reason. It says, wash you, make you clean. Put away the evil of your doings from before mine eyes. Cease to do evil. Learn to do well. This is the royal law. This is an idiom established in James 2, 7 through 12. It says, if you fulfill the royal law, ye do well. Seek judgment, relieve the oppressed, judge the fatherless, plead for the widow. Come now, and let us reason together, saith Jehovah. Though your sins be as scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red like crimson, they shall be as wool. If you be willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. And if you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured with the sword, for the mouth of Jehovah has spoken it. So Ezekiel 20:20 says, and hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you. You shall know that I am Jehovah your God. Like I said, we have to rebuke these things harshly, these fables. Titus 1:13 says, this witness is true. Wherefore rebuke them sharply, that they may be sound in the faith, not giving heed to Jewish fables and commandments of men that turn from the truth. Unto the pure all things are pure, and unto them that are defiled and unbelieving is nothing pure, but even their mind and conscience is defiled. We have to rebuke these errors. These things are leading from the truth. And Revelation 22:14-15 says, blessed are they that do his commandments, the 10 commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and they may enter in through the gates into the city. For without are dogs. This is a dumb dog watchman, Isaiah 56. The sorcerers and whoremongers and murderers and idolaters, and whosoever loveth to make a lie. And this doctrine is a lie. Murdering, 1 John 3 says, don't hate your brother in your heart. If you do, or don't hate your brother, if you don't rebuke him, you're suffering sin upon him. Leviticus 19 says to rebuke the sin. If you don't, then you got blood on your hands. So don't forsake the gathering, as Hebrews 10 tells us, especially as the day is approaching. If you need fellowship, come to our Bible studies, Andrew Repent on Twitter, and straightAsTheGate.net. We have amazing brothers and sisters from all over the world, and we would love to fellowship with you.